Good morning, Internet. This is the Friday morning real estate chat. Let me go ahead and get everything looking pretty good. Post questions in the chat. Let me go ahead and get this disclaimer rolling. There we go. And let's see what else is needed. I think that's about it. I'm Ryan Ingram, and this morning we're going to talk about real estate. So, any sort of real estate questions that you have, be sure to post them in the chat, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. So let's see. Let me go ahead and catch you guys up on our week because I think I've got some really big news for for me, not for anyone else. Let's see. I know today we're supposed to close on a couple of properties. Let me count how many. All right, so yep. So after we're closing on 4 properties later today, which will put us at 183 properties. Which we started the year at 84. So that means that so far this year we would have purchased 99 properties. I thought the big news was going to be that we purchased 100, but that should come later on, hopefully next week or the week after. We put 2 properties under contract this week, and those were both pretty quick closes. So it's really exciting. I mean, when we first started the year, our goal originally was to double. So a couple years ago, we set the goal in our heads that we were going to double every year, and just until we just couldn't anymore. So, buying 80 properties this year seemed to be like a really tall order, and it didn't seem like we were really going to be able to do it. But here we are, having purchased 99 doors. It's pretty surreal. I'm feeling very, very grateful. I thought we started the year at 80. But in talking with my brother about it, I know the last time that we made a video together, we were celebrating getting to 80 doors because that was our goal for 2020. Was getting to 80 properties, and that seemed like a tall order as well. But the snowball effect, and kind of like how progress compounds, like we're really starting to feel that. It's really cool. We like it a lot, honestly. So yeah, I mean, I guess at the beginning of the year, so we had 84 properties and we had one part-time person, and he did all of our leasing. Now, with 180, after today, we'll be at like 183 doors, hopefully, if all goes well at closing. We're like 179 right now. We're at 179 doors, let's just call it that. And then we have 3 full-time employees, a project manager who he coordinates all the contractors, he makes all the scopes of work for the properties, handles all the maintenance requests. Now, he does some work. He's very capable, very solid individual. Um, but he coordinates with a lot of the contractors that we use. So we've got about 4 or 5 contractors that we regularly use, and we're trying to add to that number just so that we can get some projects completed quicker. These people do not work exclusively for us, but we do our best to keep them busy. And so that's our project manager. And then we have the guy that was part time at the beginning of the year. He's now full time, and he does all of our leasing and also collects all of the delinquencies. So he makes sure that everybody pays on a timely basis. And if they don't, then another fantastic thing that he does is forward everything over to our attorney to get people evicted. So we don't like doing that, but it's hard to run a business when you're not paid. So, there's that. And then the third full time guy that we have, I guess he falls on the maintenance side, but he's just He's very, very helpful anytime we need anything that, like utilities. We need to meet utilities companies, places. A lot of the utilities companies aren't set up to have um, like people that have a lot of single family homes. It's really difficult. I think logistically, that's probably the most difficult thing that we deal with in the business is always trying to coordinate and appease the utility companies. And, they're all monopolies. So it's not like we have any options. It's not a free market by any means. So you kind of have to do whatever it is that they say, regardless of how much sense it makes or how convenient it is. So he handles that and also helps with the rehabs and helps pick up materials and whatnot for contractors. Very solid team. Super pumped. So that's everything that we have going on. So a lot of my brother and I's conversations here recently have been kind of oriented towards getting through the end of this year, making sure that all the properties that we've acquired, because even though we have acquired more properties than we ever have before, we've purchased 99 so far this year. We have a lot of vacancies and we have a lot of open rehab projects. So I think this morning, as of this morning, we've got about 27 to 29 vacancies, which is a big number. A lot of those are because we have purchased properties that, have a very small punch list. So it's just a matter of working through those punch lists and getting them up for rent. So it shouldn't be too time consuming to knock that back down to about 10. And I know I've mentioned on this channel several times that 10 is about all the open rehab projects that we want at one time. And I would say we're still pretty close to that as far as like full rehabs go. There's cosmetic work that needs to be done in several of these places. But hopefully, once we have the available people, it's just a couple of days' work before we get those rented out. Let's see. What else can I catch you guys up on before the questions start rolling in? I am actively looking for people interested in selling insurance for the insurance agency that I have. So if you have any interest in either obtaining your insurance license or selling insurance in Ohio, send me an email. Let me go ahead and put my email up here as well for a little bit since I just said that. Ryan@seekwisdom.us. So feel free to email me if that interests you at all. Let's see. I'm trying to think of anything else that we have handled that's noteworthy. Hey, Ian Gilligan, what's up, man? Can I get your thoughts on how best to structure a package deal? 5 houses where all are occupied, way under market rent, and all need significant rehabs. That is rough. Um, let's see here. So obviously, the best structure at first, while the rehab is being done, is a land contract. And I say that because if you were to try to purchase this with banks, even if you've got that 25% down, then because the state of the property, it might be really difficult to get financing on there initially. So if you can strike up a seller finance deal, then that would be best. If you're buying them under market as well, then maybe you could find like a local bank that's willing just to do a normal 75% loan for you. And if that's the case, what I would recommend, since they're all occupied, is not to make any major repairs on the property until they turn. So if you can find a local bank that is willing to finance these for you initially at the purchase, then I would do that. Where we are currently, that would be our preferred method. So to buy them with traditional financing in place up front and then only make repairs as people move out or as things are needed. So, like, if something in the bath, like we have one right now where the toilet was leaking, and rather than just going and fixing the toilet, we renovated the entire bathroom. So it's just tough. It's tough to coordinate when properties are occupied and in need of significant rehab. It's just really tough from like a logistical standpoint, unless you just kick them out to rehab the unit. But a lot of people are fine with the way that they're living, so long as everything works appropriately. And you also run into an issue where if somebody, even if they're paying under market, like let's say the market rents 1,000, they're paying $600 a month. um, the bathroom needs to be updated. A lot of people aren't interested in paying an extra $400 per month for a new bathroom. So it's a tough sell. And then if you're able to raise their rent by like $50 per month, that's not a good ROI on you going out of pocket for that bathroom. However, the property does need a new bathroom at some point. So I don't know, man. That's tough. Land contract first, traditional financing second, keeping everybody in place. Now, if you were to go to the other extreme and use like a hard money lender or private money on these properties, then maybe it would make sense if you're going to raise the rehab money as well, and it's private money, to then buy all of them with private money and then just pick one, rehab it, kick the person out, rehab it, and then refinance that with a traditional lender and refinance them one at a time as they're done. That way, you're freeing up the private capital, you're lowering your holding costs, and you're making the necessary renovations. That's another idea that I'm currently having. Yeah, I think those are really the only three options. I would just say, you want to be really mindful in cases like this of your holding costs, because, five properties and handling contractors and outlaying all the rehab costs, that's you're moving a lot of money really quickly. So I would just make sure that you're not taking on more than you can chew. But I think you're doing this full time now, right? Supervillain's hero. Love your videos. Please keep up the great work. For people like myself that see the information that you provide is priceless for free. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Unfortunately, this is the only time that kind of fits in my schedule with everything that I've got going on. I would love to do live streams more frequently and at different times, but it's tough. It's tough to balance everything. Um, maybe soon. I feel I'm a little bit self conscious about this. I feel bad about it, but man, like I think each time I get busy or something kind of comes up, YouTube is always the first thing, the first thing to go. And I'm not a fan of that. I would like to spend a lot more time making videos, but at the same time, it's tough. A lot going on, a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving parts. Hey, Brittany, happy to see you back. Good morning, Tolu. Good morning. I hope all's going well for you. Let's see. I'm trying to think of anything else that I could add. Um, yeah, I mean, I think those three options are the only ones, especially if you're using leverage. If you're buying them in cash, then I mean, I guess you could do that, and then just refinance each one of them as you finish it. I would be very apprehensive, and I think it would be a bad idea and bad for all parties if you're to buy all five and start rehabbing all five at one time, I would say of all possibilities, that's the one that I would avoid the most. So don't buy five and rehab five. Bad idea. All right. Let's see. What else can I do? The mastermind, we've got some openings. If you're interested, seek-wisdom.com/join. Just a bunch of guys. I think there's about 15 guys at the moment between the two groups. And it's 1 hour a week. We meet up via Zoom. There is two men in the middle on a weekly basis where you've got the floor to talk about any issue that you're having, either personally or professionally. Everybody, not everybody, but most of the people in the group are looking to build real estate portfolios. So, on a weekly basis, we're working through any sort of issues that might come up just logistically, sharing resources as far as contractors and strategies go. It's a good time. Good time for all parties involved. And then here's the link to PropStream. If you haven't already, feel free to use this link for a 7-day free trial of PropStream. I'm a huge fan of it. Largely what I use it for is running my own comps, doing my own analysis on properties. I find that to be very helpful. The Ingram rental calculator app, that's available in both the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. So you can analyze your own deals. I found that I use two calculators most often. The actual rental calculator, where you put in like the insurance, the taxes, and all of that, and figure out how much a property is going to cost, how much a property is going to make, and all of that. And then I also had another app that I used just to do a loan calculator. So we put two of them in one app. And this, I also found that the rental calculator that I used did not allow me to save anything. So I found that I regularly ran the same numbers over and over again. So this app also has the feature to save. And most importantly, it doesn't ask you for any of your own information. So you don't have to sign up for anything. There's no cloud. There's no information harboring or selling or any of that. So it's not invasive whatsoever. Did some math, and after clearing my credit card debt, I can buy a nice $60,000 home, first rental, and start sooner than I thought. Thank you, Ryan. Got to love these Midwest prices. That's great. That's exactly what my wife and I did. We bought a house for about $60,000. I think it was $69,000 was the total price, and that was here in Ohio as well, in the Midwest. Our mortgage came out to be right at about $400 a month, somewhere in there. That did not include the insurance. That was just like the mortgage price. That was really good. I mean, that allowed us to save a significant amount of money. That allowed us to keep our overhead really low. That allowed us to live on less than $2,000 a month and invest all of our other income. So it made a very significant difference in our life, because the house that we lived in North Carolina before that, our mortgage was $1,400 a month. So we were able to immediately save $1,000 per month, which goes a long way, especially when you're talking about down payments on $60,000 homes. So let's just do that math real quick. I think it's right around 12,500. 60,000 times 0.25. 15,000. So every 15 months, you've got the down payment for a new house, just based on that one move alone. And not to mention, whenever so if it's 15,000, that means you're carrying a $45,000 mortgage over 30 years. I mean, that's really low. And the rental rate, I'm sure, is probably around, $800 to $900 per month, maybe higher. So whenever you do turn that into a rental property, now you're adding $500 per month. So initially, when you were saving 1,000, and now you're adding 500, so now you're up to an extra $1,500 per month, so long as you don't go back into that, $1,400 per month mortgage payment, or increase your mortgage payment elsewhere after you turn this into a rental. So that's a really big deal. And the snowball effect is massive. So congratulations, that's huge news, and 100% the right decision to make. So whenever we bought that house and moved in, we had one rental property. It was a duplex here. And I told myself that I wasn't going to buy a nicer house for us to live in until we had at least 20 rental properties. That was an arbitrary number that I just made up. It felt right. It felt nice. Um, we actually made it to about 35 before we bought a new house. I was like a 700 square foot house. We had 3 kids in that house. Very tight. When we had any family over, either my parents or her parents, it just crippled our house. There wasn't enough seats. A lot of people were sitting on the floor. I've got a really fun picture when we first moved in of my parents came up for Thanksgiving and we were eating on the floor because there weren't seats for everybody. So um, yeah, so we bought 30 rental properties before we moved out. And again, just kind of seeing how that math adds up, how you are able to just build on that compounding effect. Living in a $60,000 house is kind of like the cornerstone of this empire that you're going to build. And it's not going to do anything but go up. And I think I shared earlier, like when the call first started, that after today, we've got 4 properties that we're closing on today, hopefully. And after that, we will have purchased 99 properties so far this year. And last month we bought about 30 properties, which was more than our first 3 years of business. So the snowball effect is real. Super grateful, and just how things compound is pretty surreal. So, the one thing that I've mentioned several times on this channel, especially if you've been watching the live streams for any length of time or any of the videos, I mean, for the longest time, my brother and I never paid ourselves um, from these properties. And now, I mean, we pay ourselves a little bit, but I mean, very, very little, like generally about $2,000 or $3,000 a month each out of the properties. So right now, we consider ourselves to be in growth phase. So all of the money, our gross rents at this point on 179 properties is right around 125,000. So, of that, we're taking very little. We're taking almost less than 5% of that. As like owner distributions. So we're putting it all back into the business and really focus on growth. And the results of that are pretty huge. All that to say, to echo your sentiment of buying the $60,000 house, like that's exactly where my wife and I started. Let's see here, what year was that? 2017. October of 2017 is when we bought that house. April of 2017. Nope, that's not true. August of 2017 is when we bought that first duplex. So we bought a duplex, and then at first we bought that duplex in cash. So we spent $35,000 on that duplex. And my theory was that the duplex, it was rented out for right at $1,000 per month. My theory was that the proceeds from that duplex would pay the mortgage for our property that we lived in. But that wasn't the case because, the property manager, I learned a lot, but that property management company that I started with, they nickel and dimed 100% of my profits every month. It was uncanny. They had it down to a science. So there's that. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. There is a Reddit group that I started. Um, it's in its infancy stages. So if you join there, then there's like 20 or 30 people already that have joined over there on the Reddit. I would highly recommend doing that, and that allows us to have a little bit more back and forth discourse. I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I mean, you can't beat that. So 3.5 down. I guess so I guess you wouldn't need $15,000 down if you're going to live in each one prior to renting it out. So that's a really good strategy, especially if you're down for moving a lot. You're allowed to do that 10 times before Fannie Freddie cuts you off. So generally, you should live there for about 6 months to a year before you do that. But to your point, you save 22.5% each time you do that on the down payment. So I highly recommend it, obviously. And if you can get, on each of those properties, 30 years at 3 to 4%, whatever the rates are right now. I mean, that's a fantastic, fantastic decision, and that's really going to set yourself up for success. Because, one of the things that sometimes I feel like a broken record when I'm saying this, but the average rate of inflation, and this was before they started printing all that money. So the average rate of inflation was 3.22% per year, just on average. So if you can borrow money for less than 3.22%, then really it's almost like you're getting paid because every year, um, the amount of the loan is eaten by inflation. So it's kind of like a free house if you keep the loan for the lifetime. Thanks, Earl Johnson. I sure do appreciate it. I know you buy properties in a certain area. How did you come up with your radius, and what factors played a part? That's a good call. So I was in law enforcement in Durham, North Carolina, and when I first started back in like 2011, you could buy almost any home that you wanted to in East Durham for like $5,000 or $10,000. When I left Durham in like 2017, you couldn't even buy like a condemned home in that area for less than 100 grand. So I just firsthand got to see that transformation happen. So when I moved up here to Dayton, I saw similar things. Like a lot of houses were going for that same price range. I bought one that needed no work, a duplex for 35,000. And when I moved to Dayton, what I realized was like downtown Dayton, I saw a few different like flyers and pamphlets that Dayton was putting out. And Dayton, they have a bunch of goals for downtown. So if they hit these goals and downtown becomes like a thriving metropolis again, then pretty much any area that you can invest in between downtown Dayton and any of the like outlying suburbs, that's going to be like the main thoroughfare. That should be, in theory, a good investment because as downtown attracts more people, as the people, with money from the suburbs regularly drive to downtown Dayton, they're going to be passing all of the homes on the way. And at some point, they're going to start migrating down to or considering those to be good areas to live closer to downtown rather than commuting from wherever they came from. So, really, there's one stretch between downtown and one of the suburbs that just looks horrible. And, the good news is it can't get any worse than what it is right now or when I started investing back in like 2017. It's already gotten significantly better. But I just kind of made the commitment to buy as many properties as I could along that thoroughfare so that when the tide does turn, um, in theory, I'm going to be sitting, the majority of our properties are going to be sitting between the suburbs and downtown. So that's kind of my thought process behind it. We'll see. Only time will tell. But, if I concentrate on that area, if I slowly, one house at a time, rebuild it, increase that curb appeal, and help the community, just figure out how to address the issues that it's having. And what we would love to do is once we reach a certain point, start focusing on like what the experience of living in that community is like. We don't really know anything about that, so we haven't made too many moves in that regard, but we're trying, and we've got our eyes on it. We're just reaching a point where we've never done any of this before. We're kind of making stuff up as we go. And I was talking to my brother last night, and we're going to reach a point where it's no longer okay for us to fumble through our business like we're doing right now. So we've got no idea what we're doing, but we're trying really hard and we're having tons of fun doing it. So hopefully, did you network with a real estate agent to find that area? No, no. All the research that we did was just kind of via observation. I will recommend networking with everybody, not just agents, but anyone that's a real estate investor in your area. I would highly recommend. I think one of the things that Will and I did, my brother Will, did very well is when I first moved here, when we first realized that we wanted to invest in this area, we networked very diligently with other real estate investors, um, just to try to circumvent the trial and error thing. No, no reason for us to make the same mistakes that other people did as well. So, for the first several years, I would say I had a handful of people that before I purchased a property, I would call them. We would talk about the area. I would get their sign of approval on that particular property prior to purchasing it, just to have three or four eyes that were much more experienced than I was look over everything to see if I was missing anything. So I would definitely say do that. I do have a question. If I don't need the cash flow from rentals, should I just put up for incidentals for a year or pay the loan down? Never pay the loan down, Brittany B. Unless it's like a personal preference thing. But kind of like I just said about the rate of inflation at 3.22% per year, right now interest rates are around there. So if you get an interest rate at 3% or 4%, and if you get one less than 3%, then do not, under any circumstances, be in a hurry to pay that thing off because it's free money. Especially right now. I mean, here's one thing to think about, right? So, like, I heard recently, I don't have the article or the fact check or whatever, but 40% of all currency currently in circulation has been printed in the last 18 months. So, the average rate of inflation being 3.22%, you know, I am not, big on economics or whatever, but you can draw the conclusion that maybe 3.22% of money in circulation is what was printed that caused that inflation. So right now, if you've got 40% of the money supply that's floating around, having only been created in the past 18 months, what do you think that's going to do to inflation? I've seen some reports. I know some people's like Social Security has been adjusted by like 7%, and they're claiming that 7% is the only amount of inflation. And I'm not good at math, but I just can't fathom how inflation is 7% if 40% of the money in circulation has been printed over the past 18 months. Something's not adding up. Um, but let's just like walk through and let's say that this house that you're buying, I know it's for 60, but let's make it better numbers, and let's just bump it up to 100,000. So if you have a fixed loan for $100,000 at 3%, so that means regardless of how long you have this loan, it's fixed. That interest rate's not going to go up. That interest rate is not going to go down. Your principal balance isn't going to go up, and it's not going to go down unless you pay it, right? So 40% of the money supply, let's just bump that up to 50. And let's say that, next year they print another 50% of the money in circulation. Then effectively what that means is, if inflation is 50%, that means, uh, as far as purchasing power goes, like what you could buy with $1, you're now going to have to spend $1.50 on. So the money that you already have on the loan, that $100,000, it's a fixed price. It's not going to adjust with inflation. So now, if your wages increase, if you make more money, if everything adjusts appropriately, then sure, the fixed amount of that mortgage isn't going to change. It's still $100,000. But now, as far as purchase power is concerned, it's equivalent to $50,000 of like the amount of money after you've adjusted for inflation. So in theory, you made $50,000 from inflation on that fixed asset. Now, if you were to pay off the loan, then you wouldn't be able to benefit from that. So I hope that made sense. It's kind of Again, I'm no mathematician. I'm no, you know, economist. I don't know. But that's why inflation is a very powerful tool for people that have assets that exist apart from financial instruments like real estate, right? Like, yes, you use financial instruments like loans and mortgages and stuff to buy real estate, but the real estate has value apart from the financial system because that's where people live. It's like gold is a good example. Gold is a metal, it has value. At first, our currency was backed by gold, but kind of like to express this, I guess, is the value of gold doesn't change, right? Like 1 ounce of gold is 1 ounce of gold. What changes is the amount of dollars it takes to buy that 1 ounce of gold. Similarly, like this housing bubble that happened, right? It's not like the houses lost any value. The financial instruments used to purchase the homes is what had the massive impact in value. Really hope that makes sense. Long answer to say no, do not pay off your mortgage early. Bad idea. Now, I'm going to change my answer when interest rates adjust to like 20%. Once interest rates are 20%, you better pay that thing off as quickly as possible. But right now, we're at the very low end of historic interest rates. We're even lower than inflation, which means we're the economists out there would say that we're really desperate. We're trying really hard to keep our system alive right now and our currency stable by injecting a lot of money into the system. And the way to benefit from that is by using as much of the stuff that they're printing to buy real tangible assets that exist apart from the financial system. So don't hoard cash. Hoarding cash right now is a very bad idea. So don't fill up your bank account. Um, if you have like no reserves, then yes, you probably do want to fill up your bank account. But once you have a comfortable amount of reserves, you shouldn't save a penny more. You should hold it in other things that aren't fiat related. I hope that makes sense. It's really important that you understand that so that you could actually become wealthy. Because if you hold your money in cash or most cash equivalents, um, other people are kind of stealing it from you very secretly by printing more of it. You know, one thing that Robert Kiyosaki said that I thought was really cool, very impactful to me, is no matter how fast you can save it, they can print it faster, which is really true. So, like, let's say, that's why like people on fixed incomes, it really hurts them because inflation is coming, whether you're ready or not. So, you got to stay ahead by having real stuff, collecting real things with their fake fiat. Marcus Markle, Marcus Markey. I just learned about cash out refinancing and moving my FHA to conventional before moving to my next FHA home for another 3.5 down, owner occupied. You don't have to do that. You don't have to. I think that's a little bit confusing and overall inaccurate. You don't have to refinance your FHA to conventional before. Well, okay, so these are really broad. I don't know, Brittany B. My brother, I'll have him on here soon, who's the mortgage loan officer expert. You can have 10 3.5% down loans, owner occupied. FHA is a different animal. FHA and VA loans are another thing that I'm not sure about. But let's just talk about Fannie Freddie, and I won't talk about FHA or VA. And Fannie Freddie lets you give 3.5% down. Um, owner occupied, and you can have 10 of those. I know I know a couple people that's how they've been doing it. I know VA loans are no money down. Good morning. I purchased your book and look forward to reading it. Thanks. Thanks. I always, every time I get my statement that tells me how many books I sold the previous month, I always feel like making a video about it, talking about how, I've retired off passive income from book sales. It's not true. I mean, generally they're good for about $4.30 per month. This last month, probably thanks to you, Dominic, it was $12. So I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed writing that book. I think if I had all of the time in the world, I would write a lot of books. Our downtown is growing too, so I want to get in that area too here in Fort Wayne. Yeah, or even just close to it, or just not necessarily close to it, but on like one of the main roads to it or from it. And I'm not necessarily a fan of spending too much time trying to get into local politics, but I do think having a grasp on it just enough to to know where people are putting money. Like I know, like right now, the city of Dayton has a big project they're doing on the street called Salem. So anything you can get in a stone's throw of Salem, presumably, is going to increase in value because right now the city's dumping several millions of dollars into that area. So if you can kind of plan your real estate investing alongside your city's planning department, then I think you're going to be better off. Have you ever been scared not to find renters for your properties? Not really. Not really. I think what would be most detrimental to the rental industry is when employers move out of the area, right? Like, in 2008, like when the housing crash happened, rents did not go down. They didn't go up, but they also didn't go down. And a lot of people lost their homes, which put more pressure on the rental market because more people needed homes. So the rental business was not a bad one to be in back in 2008. The biggest threat to rentals is government regulations and employers pulling out. So, like this morning, I read an article that some company called Tenneco is pulling out of Kettering. So 650 jobs are being removed from Kettering. Almost positive that that is somehow going to impact the uh, rental rates in that like surrounding area. It might not be much. It might not be for long because 650 jobs is a lot of jobs, but not compared to the overall population. So when GM pulled out of this area back in, I guess the 2000s, that wreaked havoc on the rental market because, we're talking about tens of thousands of jobs left the area. So that was not good. So like right now, I think the biggest employer in the area is Wright Pat Air Force Base, which is pretty stable. I don't think they're going anywhere. I think Wright Pat Air Force Base is one of the premier Air Force bases in the nation. But uh, if you ever hear any news about Wright Pat Air Force Base closing or cutting a significant number of jobs, then start sending up some prayers for little old Ryan and Will Ingram because we're going to be hurting. I think they have like 40,000 people. How did being in insurance help or hurt you in real estate? It helped me because that was the clearest path that I had to provide value to the people that I wanted to know. So, like, I was able to become the insurance agent and provide a service that most other insurance agencies didn't because most insurance agents aren't that familiar with rental properties. So I had this niche that I was able to uh, help people. Like I was able to provide value to people that I wanted to be my mentors by helping them and easing the pain that they had in talking to whatever insurance agent they used. So that was just like a clear value path, right? But you could do that in any way. Insurance is just the way that it was easiest for me because it's something that I already had a little bit of knowledge in, and then I just went very deep to do that. But if you're going to ask somebody to mentor you, then you really need to provide some sort of value. You really want to be just as beneficial to them as they are to you. And if you don't know how to do that, you should put some very serious thought into how to do it. The guy that does our leasing, I mean, we met via this YouTube channel, and he used to live in Arizona, and he moved his entire family up here to Dayton to take advantage of the Midwest prices. He really, wanted to figure out ways to help us, and he ended up doing our leasing. Right? It's very helpful. That was one of our biggest pain points when we met, and hey, I mean, I would do anything for the guy, at this point, but he went way above and beyond to um, help me out, which in turn makes me want to like help him as much as possible. And I say, there's a part of it that I don't know how to reconcile when I'm like giving that advice of this, I'm a huge fan of like, being a Christian. I've freely received an immense amount, eternal forgiveness and all. So consequently, I want to like freely give. But I've got a lot of personal problems that require my time to work through them, right? And there's only like so much of me without depriving, you know, uh, my family or my businesses. So since I've got like a limited amount of time, and that's with anyone, right? So you don't want to form a lot of like really fake relationships that are all like works based. But at the same time, if you have this mindset where you're constantly giving more than you're asking for, then you're kind of setting yourself up for success because of this natural, reciprocity that people are going to want to help you out as much as you helped them. Um, I'm not saying go out and form all your relationships that way. That sounds super exhausting and very contingent. But at the same time, I say all that to say insurance was an easy way for me to provide a lot of value to other people. And in turn, I was able to get kind of insight on their real estate investing operations, figure out, have, conversations with them about their insurance, and then sneak in a question or two. Um, but again, I mean, you could do that in any way. I talk a lot. Boy, I talk a lot. How much should you keep for rental reserves? Any number that I could possibly throw out is very arbitrary. It really depends on personal preference. There are some people that I know that are comfortable in like a 1 month reserve for their personal expenses. There are other people that I know that are that are not comfortable unless they have at least like a year's worth of reserves. Um, so both of those people should get different answers. Similarly, if you are confident in your ability to rent out your property very quickly, if you're confident that your people are not going to tear up the property, if you're confident in all the mechanicals, the roof, and everything on the property, then there's probably not too pressing of a need for bulky reserves. If you're like Ian Gilligan and you're about to buy 5 properties in need of major rehabs, then if you're not going to rehab them immediately, you need to have a much higher reserve for all those properties than if you were to buy 5 turnkey brand new properties, new roofs, new mechanicals, all of that. So I think the perfect answer is a situational one where you go through, make an assessment of the property, figure out the age of the roof, the age of the water heater, the age of the plumbing, the age of the furnace and AC unit, figure out how much the average lifespan is, and then budget appropriately. The arbitrary number that I have from one of my mentors is about $3,000 per property. But in the same vein, like once you get over a certain threshold, like once you have more than like $250,000 in reserves, then adding more to it, like it's like at that point you are kind of like playing on the law of averages or the law of large numbers. Like it would be a really bad, like catastrophic month if more than $250,000 worth of bad things happened in a single month. So, um, when you're first starting out, maybe $10 or $15,000 per property is the right answer based on the condition of your property. And when you get a couple, maybe $5,000 is a more reasonable place to have. But if you're like Tolu in Texas, buying turnkey, really nice, recently rehabbed, remodeled properties, your need for a large reserve is much smaller than someone like Ian buying 5 distressed properties. Dapper D, good morning. Javon Parker, what's up, man? Thanks, I appreciate it, man. And best of luck to you on your however much it'll cost to help you sleep well at night. Hey, you already answered it. Yes, I have. I did not know that about Cincinnati, The Art of the Deal by Trump. I mean, the only thing that I really remember from that book is ask for like 2 or 3 times more than what you want and then meet in the middle where you actually wanted to begin with. But I mean, like that's obvious. And if you just like look at the man, especially after he became president, and like the things that he would say, like knowing that that's what he was doing was just like overshooting everything and then hoping that it falls somewhere in the middle, which is what he wanted initially. It just makes his entire style make a lot more sense. I have never been a good negotiator. The only thing that I do really well is, you know, analyze properties and kind of stick to a number. So if I know that the most that I could pay is $30,000 for one property because of all the work that it needs, then I'll tell the people that, and they can either kind of take it or leave it. A lot of times they leave it, and that's okay. But I'm a huge fan of like win-win stuff. So I never want to succeed at the expense of someone else. I've had a few business dealings where I felt like I was taken advantage of a lot. And a lot of it was, 100% of it was just due to my own either ignorance, naivety, or, just lack of experience. And it felt pretty bad, especially looking back on it, hindsight being 2020. It's just like, man, I should have seen that coming, but also kind of, shame on them for doing it. Like there's no way they didn't know exactly what they were doing. And they're over there feeling like they're winning at kind of my expense, both financially and kind of emotionally. So I made a commitment to myself after, having that happen to me a couple of times. It's just like, hey, any transaction that I do, I want it to be a win-win. I've offered people more than what they were asking for on properties before, and not because it was a competitive market, but because it was worth more than that, and it was an off-market deal where they just kind of came to me with a price, right? Investors have tried to give us money at a percentage rate that we could do better than, so we gave them a higher interest rate. Obviously there's a time and a place for everything, but the best I can, keeping a clear conscience, kind of like to Javon's point, whatever makes you sleep good at night is what you should strive for. So that's how I feel. Do you attend your local RIA and have relationships with the more sophisticated investors in Dayton? I do not attend the local RIA. I think I'm a member there still. I have no interest in saying anything bad about them. Um, most of these things meet at night, and after March of 2020, when everything was canceled and I was at home with my kids every night, I decided that whenever everything opened back up, I would not put anything on my nighttime schedule ever. So, um, I do my best to be done working most days around 2 o'clock, so that I could be home with my kids and hang out with them. Um, so my answer on being involved is I do my best not to be involved in anything that meets at night. So there's that. Otherwise, it's probably a good idea. And I mean, more sophisticated investors, I don't know. Everybody's in a different place, right? I don't know how you define sophisticated, but I would say that everybody has something to offer, even if they're just starting out. So I wouldn't. I don't know. I'm a huge fan of wisdom, and it's found. There's not like one source of it, right? It's just tons and tons and tons of tiny little wisdom nuggets strewn about the world. So everybody's got a little bit of it. You just gotta find it. So I think it's beneficial to have people in your network that have a significant portfolio. And I think it's very important and imperative that you also have several people in your network with no portfolio or a very small one that's building. You know, just as much as you're receiving from other people, you need to make sure that you're turning around and giving it to other people as well. So, my mentor that I have that has a much significantly larger portfolio than I do, I've got several people on the other side that I have a significantly larger portfolio than them, just at different places. But you always want to give more than you receive, I guess, is the big message that I keep saying today. So, all right, go ahead and post any questions that you have in the chat. We're at the end of that comment thread, and I've doodled on this entire page. So let me flip pages too, and I'm ready. Ready for any of the questions you might throw at me. Right at 1 hour, got 11 people on, which is a good number. I like that number a lot. Thanks, Mom. I just read a really nice text message from my mom. All right. Man, what are we going to do if nobody has any questions? Hey, 3D Tom. Good morning, sir. Well, I'll give it a couple more minutes, but hey, maybe the live stream's only an hour today. And I know I've got like a core group of people that's on here every week, and there's only so many questions to ask on a weekly basis. So sometimes, there's like 30 people, 20 to 30 people on the live stream. Other times there's, I'm guessing that like the people that come on a regular basis, the true core crowd is about 10 people. And I know probably, I think like 100, I think the stats that I monitor say that like 140 people on a weekly basis, the same 140 people watch the live stream. Any views that it gets over and above that are new people. So I know there's a lot of people that catch the replays that aren't able to ask questions. Nora Stocks. I haven't seen your name before, I don't think. So welcome. I'm happy you're here. Is there a one-stop software or company you would recommend when conducting screenings? I'm attempting to design how I will conduct my background checks. We use Appfolio. Appfolio is partnered with someone. I know most of the property management software companies have relationships with people that run the background checks. Um, so trying not to reinvent the wheel or add too many steps in our process. We use Appfolio, but if we used, Rent Manager or another one of these like apartments.com, they acquired Cozy or Buildium. Or if we didn't use one and we just used Zillow to list our properties, I know Zillow has like a background check program too. We would likely use whatever partner company our property management software works with. Um, Friction, I think, is the biggest thing for us. So whatever's the lowest friction. So since we're already in the software, that's what we would use. If we went to Zillow.com to list all of our rentals, and that's how we receive the applications, then that's how we would process the background checks too. If we ever leave Appfolio and go with a rent manager, then that's who we would use. I'm trying to think of one, but you're so good with your info. You're also here every week, so thanks for that. I'm learning there are different resources, but nothing that is a one stop. Do you have suggestions? Yeah, I think Appfolio would be that good one. That's what we use. Now there is like a 50 property minimum there. Um, Buildium is one that I know a lot of people that don't meet Appfolio's minimum use. And I'm not sure if Rent Manager has a minimum, but if I had to do it again and if I had to start over, I would pick Rent Manager over Appfolio, just because of a few features that they have that make it a little bit more of a one stop. Um, but Appfolio is good. And if that's not, if you check out those and it's not what you're looking for, then hey, keep in the back of your mind that you might be able to either partner with one of these companies and give them some advice on some features to add. You might be able to make your own property management software if you got a team of the right people. And if you can't find exactly what you're looking for, figure out, the market, if there's how big of a market there is for it, and see what all it takes to create your own. It might be something worth looking into. Man, uh, as soon as I get this insurance agency stabilized a bit more, I've hired a guy. He starts on Monday, and that's gonna be a big deal. But I mentioned this earlier. I'm not sure if you were on yet, but each time I get busy, YouTube is always the first thing to go, and I'm not. I'm a little bit self conscious about that, of course, because this is an important platform to me. Um, I do my best to never cancel these Friday things, but I've had the intention of making more YouTube videos for a very long time. And what I need to do is bite the bullet and just find somebody that's down to like edit the videos for me. Because whipping out my phone or setting up the camera and recording it isn't the hard part. The actual spending like an hour, 2 hours editing and uploading it, that's the real big time commitment that I always bulk on when I get busy. So I've even got some like raw footage that I just need to edit and upload from a while back. So yeah, uh, yesterday I had a real big sit down with myself and told myself that I'm extending a exorbitant amount of grace onto me, because I've been beating myself up about a lot of my shortcomings. Not posting any YouTube videos was one of the things on my list, and I like to think that I could do anything all the time, but hey, I've got limitations and I've only got so much time. And if I look back at like what we've accomplished over the year, we've almost bought 100 homes, which is mind blowing. It's hard to believe. So any notion that I'm not doing a good job on something, or that all of the things that I've dropped the ball or let slip through the cracks. I shouldn't do that. I should try and patch those as much as possible. But at the same time, I mean, I've got a lot going on, and I need to be more realistic about that. So some things just can't make the cut, and I shouldn't internalize that in any way other than I'm a little bit busy, which isn't a good excuse. But see, here I go. I'm trying to put it back and internalize it. I'm going to stop that. So the one action item that I really want to do, obviously, the insurance agency, I kind of built it and only had one person running it. So I need to find a couple of people. I've got one guy. He's starting on Monday, and I think he is a fantastic fit and is really going to grow that business. But I also need to hire a couple more people to start selling insurance, just to help that business be more self sufficient. And in the future, if one person leaves, I should not allow it to kind of overtake my schedule like this, because a lot of the things I've been dropping the ball on have stemmed from the insurance agency side of my kind of business portfolio and agenda. We do our best not to. Oh my goodness, we do our best not to. And no fault. I'm not. It's a great program, I'm sure, but we are just not set up for the overwhelming amount of bureaucracy that goes with it. It's just form after form after form. One of our main contractor's daughter has a Section 8 voucher and wanted to rent one of our properties because it's really nice. And we went through this massive, massive rigmarole of paperwork. And again, not the brightest of fellas. And going through that paperwork, trying to figure out what they want, took a significant amount of time. And then, her voucher was for like 1,400. And again, I don't know anything about the program. We largely don't use it. We have inherited some Section 8 tenants, but we have never placed one ourselves. So we've never been on this side. So I don't know how it works, but her voucher was for 1,400. We wanted to rent the property for 1,000. It's a very nice house. Um, we filled out all that paperwork, assuming that everything was great because her voucher was for 1,400. Section 8 came back and said that they're only willing to give us 850 for that property because they don't think it's as nice as we do. And it's just like, we could rent that out on like the open market or whatever you want to call it, not Section 8, for probably 1,000 or 1,100 or something. It's a really big, really nice house. So I don't know. Right now, after that experience, and I'm not trying to formulate an entire opinion around just one experience, but at the same time, we don't have properties that stay on the market for too long without the use of Section 8. So when I've got the ability to rent something out with no strings and no bureaucracy other than the stuff that we create, the paperwork that we create, or tons of strings and a significant amount of paperwork, I'm always going to pick this one, especially when government entities just are notorious for how slow they move and how picky they are, and just not a fan. HELOC or cash out refinance on your residential property to buy another property. They both have their pros and cons. I would say a HELOC. I think I'm a fan of a HELOC a little bit more because you're not paying for it when you're not using it. Um, and I think it kind of holds you. I don't know. It's just in my head, it seems cleaner if you have the HELOC. Let's say you take out 100,000 to go buy a new property. You get that property purchased, stabilized, and then you refinance that property. The proceeds from the refinance pay off your HELOC, and you now have a full HELOC to go out and do it again. If you just did a cash out refinance, you're going to have a fixed, monthly payment, regardless of whether you're using the property or not, or using that money or not. And then Wow. Completely lost my train of thought. Man. You've got the cash. You've got the $100,000 if that you did a cash out refinance. You're paying that monthly rate regardless. And you've got 100 grand that's kind of free and clear to go out. And then, if you put $100,000 into a property, you you refinance it, you now have $100,000 in your account again. And whether the money is used for business stuff or not, the monthly payment kind of doesn't care about it. So I guess there's a little bit more pressure to make sure that you're always deploying that $100,000 if you're doing a cash out refinance. And there's I guess there's like a little bit less oversight because you don't have an active debt that you have to pay off in order to redo it. So I guess it really depends on your goals and how many deals that you have out there. I know on our rental portfolio side, we had a couple of lines of credits over our rental properties, and we ended up turning all of them into long-term debt. So we currently have like some lines of credit, but none that are attached to a property. And I do not have a HELOC on my personal residence. Do you have any videos on your channel about how to purchase a Fannie? Nope. No, I don't. Not particularly. I did a live stream with my brother at one point, and we answered a lot of questions about Fannie Freddie. But I wouldn't have any idea how to find that one or point you to it. And I don't even remember, I don't even think it was like a clear cut, like how to purchase one. So, I mean, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, any of those, they're pretty much just they're very much so I mean, your bank will walk you through it, and they're gonna, I don't know, it really, their requirements are so intrusive, depending on your personal financial situation, they're going to ask you for tons of documents. Everything but blood. Everything but blood is what one of my mentors said. And I mean, you have to write. I've had to write a lot of letters explaining purchases that I've made, or explaining where deposits came from, stuff like that. Should I start a property management company once I get a couple of properties? I don't think so. I think you should manage your properties for sure, but I don't think I would. I don't think I would definitely not manage anybody else's properties. That's for sure. So honestly, the reason that we started a property management company was because when we first got rolling, our CPA and attorney got together and they decided, for just an arbitrary reason, that we should only have 10 properties per LLC. So since we had all these different property owning LLCs, we didn't want to have 10 people write checks to this LLC, 10 people write checks to that LLC, and just keeping them all separate just seemed like a headache. So what we did was we created just one LLC that managed the properties for all of them. That way we only had one client facing name that checks were made out to, that one website where you log on, one portal for like Appfolio. So it was just ease for us. But I'm not necessarily sure that once you get a couple of properties, I would create that, especially if you're going to manage them all yourself. No reason to create paperwork just to create paperwork. Name of your book? Rental Property Insurance, An Investor's Guide to Insurance. It's that blue book right there. Man, respect for Weatherman for being able to do this. There we go. Yep, that one. Rental Property Insurance, An Investor's Guide to Insurance. The name does not flow well because I was solely naming it to try to rank for search engine optimization. So anytime somebody typed in rental property insurance, I wanted my book to show up. Let's see if that's a thing. Rental property insurance. No, my book is nowhere to be found. But I'm going up against people like State Farm and Geico and USAA. Let's see here. Yeah. State Farm, Hippo, CSAA insurance, whatever that is, Investopedia. These people are paying big dollars to be the top. Oh, look at that. Images for rental property insurance. My book is the first image that shows up. Now that's cool. You know what though? Maybe that's the case because it's my computer. I shouldn't have gotten so excited about that. It probably has something to do with my cookies or whatever people collect. So I'm looking in the wrong place. I should be focused on property management. I should be. So you're looking in the wrong place. Maybe. What is the best strategy to buy a house in this market? What is the best strategy to buy a house in this market? I have 500K cash, but I'm not able to find a good deal where you can book profit. I mean, I'm really biased because I've built, my entire portfolio here in the Midwest. But I mean, if I were not me, if I were in your position, if I had 500,000 cash, I would be really particular about where I put that, and I would probably end up moving to the Midwest. I mean, even if because 500 grand would not go far in most markets, but it would go real far here in the Midwest. So if you're down to move somewhere in the old like Rust Belt or whatever, um, and really get involved here and not mind like the demographic. Like I know some California people and some New York people. One guy in Arizona told me that he thinks that it would be a punishment, an extreme punishment to move to Ohio. Yet he has 2 or 3 rentals here, right? But he always wants to live in Arizona. My brother lives in Jacksonville, Florida. He would never move here. I think if he had to pick between selling our properties or moving here, I'm pretty sure he would sell all of our properties. Um, but whenever I moved here and started, I had 100 grand. That's what I had saved up in cash. Um, and I mean, 4 years later, we are very close to 200 properties. We're like 180. So, I mean, in theory, your 500 could get you there faster. And I think that's what I would do. I think right now the Midwest is the best bang for your buck from a returns perspective, from a stability perspective. And I can't help but think that either at some point, all of the hot markets are going to come down, or all of the colder markets, especially right now, it's cold, getting cold in the Midwest, are going to go up. And I think if remote work stays popular, I think if a lot of the people that used to be built on manufacturing and industry, if they can appropriately reutilize the infrastructure that they already have here, there's nowhere to go but up. Like right now, you could still buy properties here for less than replacement cost. So you can buy properties for cheaper than you could build them. It seems like a no-brainer to me. So even though exactly what I've done has been moved to the Midwest and buy a lot of in my opinion, they're B properties. But if you talk to anybody else, they're probably all C properties. I think that's. I mean, I think that's your best bet. I would rather do exactly what I have done than anything else I've heard of people doing in other markets. It's probably a little bit of a comforting thing, probably some limiting beliefs on my end, but by and large, I would say, you know, I've really enjoyed it, and I would say that a lot of real estate investing, ROI being equal, it comes down to what are the types of problems that you would like to have. So personally, I don't want to deal with the issues that come up from small multifamilies. I don't like our 4 units. I don't like our duplexes. I don't like our 3 units. I prefer single family homes. Um, just my hangups, my personal preferences. Come clown with me. 2 rental properties now. I'm really pumped for you, but I don't know who you are. I don't remember seeing this username ever, but I'm really happy you've got 2 rental properties now. Makes me real excited. And it is cold in the Midwest. It's cold. Come clown with me. Yeah, I don't know. Doesn't ring a bell, but I'm really pumped for you. And I would say get to 10 as quickly as possible. I'm sure you already know that, but I think 10 properties, I'm convinced that 10 is the number where you start actually tapping into like the law of averages or the law of large numbers. And when we had 2 properties, we had 8 properties at one point. And like when we were at 8 and under, every month, Will and I would have this very painful conversation with each other about how much money do we need to put into the business to keep it alive for another month. So when we hit 10, in all fairness, I think we went from 8 to 21 properties. But once we had that income coming in from the 21 properties, we never had to put in any of our own capital as a result of routine maintenance. No, I think that would be a massive headache. So we used to have an individual LLC for each 10 properties. We have since decided to stop that. And all of the properties that we acquire henceforth will be in one LLC. And we will have massive amounts of insurance to mitigate the risk instead of trying to mitigate the risk by dividing into separate entities. Refinancing has become a real big burden. We recently refinanced about 40 properties, which was strewn across 4 different LLCs. And we had to pay 4 sets of closing costs for one loan because of the 4 different underlying entities. So as we continue to scale and our goal is to double on every year, and next year, if we're able to pull that off, then we're going to have to buy somewhere around 180 to 200 homes, which is going to be a big deal. And just thinking about forming 20 new entities on top of buying 200 homes just seems unnecessary, especially if we have the right insurance partner. It really depends on your life goals. Like if you've got 10 to 15 properties and you have it very managed and very dialed in, and you are living a very comfortable life and you're happy with your workload, then I don't think you will get niche for more. But I think if you are stagnant at 10 to 15 properties and you had a really good time building those 10 to 15, then you might long after what it felt like to build something. And then I think you might build something else just because you realized that you kind of fell in love with the process as you were going through it. If you have some medical needs, some additional bills, some additional desires for where you want to live, where you want to travel, that exceeds your income from 10 to 15 properties, that might give you an itch to build more. Once you start understanding the appreciation and start feeling the effects of the principal pay down, the appreciation, and the tax benefits, that might give you an itch to do more. And to a certain point, like the law of averages, like for me, I would not be interested in owning 5 rentals because it's the same from an effort standpoint as owning 50 rentals. Um, and owning 50 rentals requires about the same amount of work as owning 80 rentals. So big things get really weird the bigger numbers get. It's a different feeling, it's a different space. I would say 5 properties is a lot more taxing than 50. It makes perfect sense on this side of it, but I'm sure as you're hearing me say that it's bizarre. Ah, gotcha. RR. Good work, man. Per Ken McElroy, ABC's rental book, he states to get individual LLC for each property, it makes more sense to have it all on one LLC. People like Ken McElroy are also, it's a different type of real estate investing. He's not taking down single family homes. I know a lot of the apartment guys have like one, like, you know, 100 unit apartment complex in one LLC, and they don't want, multiple large apartment complexes to be in one LLC. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to personal preference. Um, I've got a guy that, owns several hundred, around 800 doors, and they're all in one LLC. And I've got other people that have like 30, and each single family home is in a different LLC. It really comes down to personal preference. And like Javon Parker said earlier, whatever helps you sleep good at night. Single family homes, putting them each in one LLC is not practical because of the accounting expenses, the filing expenses, depending on what state you live in. I mean, if you're talking to a California investor, it costs them $500 per LLC per year. So you're talking about, if you were to be a California investor buying single family homes in Ohio, you're talking about almost like 1 month's rent going to just the state of California for operating that LLC per year. That's steep. That's a tall order. I would not. I don't think anybody would advise that. Now, if you own 3 different 50 unit, 100 unit apartment buildings in Ohio, and you're a California person, 3 LLCs seem like they would actually make things a little bit easier because you are doing your accounting based on that apartment building rather than an individual property. So similar, probably the same exact reasoning and logic behind me saying that 50 properties is easier than managing 5 properties is why I'm saying if you have a 50 unit apartment complex, one LLC per property makes sense, whereas one property and its own LLC seems very silly. How do you feel about the Toledo area? Such cheap properties. I saw one. A wholesaler was trying to get rid of one of them up there for like 35 grand, and it looked like a really good house. So I don't know anything about the Toledo market. I know it's colder up there than it is down here. That's about the extent of my knowledge of the area. I know they were also hit hard by the industrial manufacturing kind of rust belt stuff. Umbrella insurance is good insurance. You should have umbrella insurance. Generally, whatever your net worth is. Now, this breaks down probably once you pass that $5 million net worth threshold. But in the meantime, before you get above that, uh, you want to have an umbrella policy that is equal to or greater than your net worth. What is your perspective on multifamily properties? I'm just curious. I've planned around a multifamily approach, but some single family deals seem really good. What's your take on multi? I don't like them personally. I prefer single family homes. I don't know of, I've never, so to me, like community improvement is what I am really, really excited about. And it brings me a lot of joy seeing it. I live here in Dayton, where at one point 30% of the single family housing stock was vacant. So It does my soul a lot of good to take something that is very derelict and make it like a functioning unit of society again. I like that feeling a lot. I've never heard anyone utter the words, "Oh, that apartment building is being built here in our community." That is such a vast improvement for us, right? Right. So if community improvement is something that I want to continually do, multifamily just doesn't quite fit in that. From a ROI perspective, and kind of what I've been saying about the law of averages, I could see why investors prefer multifamilies over single families because it's much easier to buy a 50 unit apartment complex than it is to buy 50 single family homes, unless they're a portfolio being sold by someone who purchased them one at a time. Um, but me personally, just because community is high, I don't like intra tenant drama. I never want to deal with that. It makes me frustrated. A lot of the multifamilies here in Dayton are smaller. They were all built in like the 50s and 60s whenever the manufacturing was huge, the industry was huge, and everybody was moving here to work. A lot of one bed, one baths, which makes for a very transient community now. A lot of them were owned individually. You didn't have companies back then, like now, where they're building massive apartment buildings. So a lot of them are like 4, 6, maybe some 8 unit properties, but you've got like entire streets of 4 units here. And I just don't like the way that most 4 units are laid out, very close. Everybody's up in each other's business. If one person in the building is smoking some weed, the entire building smokes like weed. People don't like that. Um, those type of problems are ones that I don't have. Now, I don't like having, but if you were to get like a 20, a 50 unit, I'm sure some of the things that I dislike about the 4 units kind of disappear the more units you have in one building. So I've never done a 203K loan, but I think they're a good idea. If I if I had the bandwidth to do a rehab project and I wanted to live there, I think a 203K loan would be a really good idea. It's a very unique loan product for a very unique opportunity. I've never heard of or known anyone to actually take advantage of it and utilize it appropriately. So there's that. I don't know. Well, I am going to I'm going to go ahead and call it a day. We're an hour and a half in. We've got 7 people on. I missed last week, so I think this was a good amount of time getting back into the swing of it. So if you've got any additional questions, let's go on over to the Reddit Talk Real Estate. Um, let's hop on there, and then otherwise next week, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll see you then. Yeah, I think that's a good idea for you. The job market in Dayton is pretty good. A few people are coming in, a few people are leaving. I think a lot more needs to be done on the political front in order to attract businesses here, of which I have no control over. But we definitely have the infrastructure. We just need to figure out, as does the entire Midwest, how do we attract people given the infrastructure that we already have? Because right now, downtown Dayton is very vacant, and a lot of the big industrial kind of warehouses are also still very vacant. All right. Well, I will see you all next week, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard. Have a good week.